Okay.
Okay. Thank you for taking the time. Let me get your resume up here.
Sure. Well, thank you for calling.
The interests. Okay. Where are you located, Sandy?
I'm in New York City. I'm in Manhattan in the Upper West Side.
Oh, me too.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
We're neighbors.
Yeah, I'm at home today, actually, at 104th and Riverside. I don't know where you are.
Oh, I'm at 79th, between Riverside and West End. So we're,
Okay. Practically neighbors.
yes, we are.
So actually, it's interesting. Our office is going to be moving. The main office is going to be moving, it probably, if all goes well, October, November to 120th in Riverside. I don't know if you know, there's a building there called the Interchurch Center, and it's right across the street from the Riverside Church and then Grant's Tomb. So we're taking a floor there uh,
Nice.
in November. Yeah, right now we're in Times Square, but we're going to be moving.
All
Anyway,
right.
so thank you for doing this. I'll explain a little bit about who we are, and then I'll ask you some questions. So I'm the director of the agency, and Life Adjustment Center has been around for about 36 years. We serve about 200 or so individuals in various programs in three boroughs: Manhattan, Bronx, and Brooklyn. We have about 170 employees. We have about 110 DSPs. The rest are managers, etc. The programs that we have are in two main areas: residential IRAs, and also in day habilitation without walls, and community habilitation. And as a side business, we run a preschool, a private pay preschool in Lower Manhattan, down by the village. So let's see. Right now, I'll explain the residential layout. We have a lot of residences in one building in the Bronx. We have several residences in Manhattan in buildings that we own. We have residences in residents in Brooklyn in a building that we own. Our day habilitation programs with walls are concentrated in the Bronx, Manhattan, and in Brooklyn. We have day hab without walls in those three locations. And we have community habilitation, about 30 or so individuals served scattered throughout Manhattan and the Bronx mainly. And then there's the private school, which has about 35 students in Lower Manhattan. Let's see. The position that we're talking about, compliance officer, is hold on one second. The position that we're talking about, compliance officer, reports to me. The person who is the compliance officer will have at least, let's say, to start, at least one full-time QA person reporting to him or her, and then two part-time people reporting to him or her. And both of those part-time people used to be compliance officers here. So they've stayed on in a sort of a helping capacity, and that's what they want to do. We're fine with it. They have a lot of experience. So, that's a big help. There's a possibility, not a guarantee, that we might add another person full-time as an investigator. Right now, the person, the what do you call it? The compliance officer must have license in investigations. That's important. Uh, I don't know if you do or not, but that's an important qualification. The person who works for the compliance person does investigations. We also have managers inside the company who do investigations, not of their own departments, of course, but of other departments. And then we will sometimes use outside people as investigators. The position requires minimum of about 5+ years of management experience, if not per se in OPWDD, voluntary provider agencies itself, then in agencies related to OPWDD. In OPWDD itself, in a voluntary provider agency, in a OMH capacity, somewhere that's closely related. Also, I would want that person to have management experience of other people because there will be people reporting to the compliance officer. The person needs to have good experience with policy development and policy revision. The person would also be doing a fair amount of internal training of staff from the sorry
Sorry.
from the the inception, when they have orientation through the remainder of their time with Life Adjustment Center, and that takes the form of in-service meetings of various kinds. We are investing and will be launching full time, I hope, in July, the use of TheraP, which is an electronic health records system. We've been behind the times in adopting one, but we are now doing that. So the person coming in, if he or she does not have direct experience with TheraP, should have experience and a fair amount of experience with an EHR, and there are a whole bunch of them that people use. Well, we're going to be using TheraP. The position is a full-time position, 5 days a week, with a one remote day option, except for Mondays and Fridays, because I don't want everybody taking long weekends unless they really have to. And like I said, there's the office right now is in Midtown, but we're going to be moving to the Upper West Side shortly. I would expect that the person who is the compliance officer is flexible in the manner in which he or she would be going around to our offices. And I don't mean every single day they're spending their entire time on the subway to get to our offices, but there's a need to go to these various locations, and that's in the Bronx, Manhattan, and Brooklyn. We will be expanding the services probably later this year into Queens in the form of Day Half Without Walls. I'm looking to do the same thing in Westchester, possibly early next year. So let's see, did I leave any essential information out? That's who we are. That's what the job is. It's a very responsible position. Oh, reporting to the board. There is a quarterly board meeting, and I expect the compliance officer to be able to give a trend report, or not so much a trend report, but a report of what kind of incidents there have been, what trends have been necessarily, trends, things like that, to the board. So that's who we are.
Okay, that's a lot of information, but I had pretty much read pretty much all of that online.
Okay.
So no, it sounds, I'm very familiar with organizations similar to yours. I've
Yes.
worked for many of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked in the IDD field for over 30 years. I did
Right.
start out as a teacher, a
Mm-hmm.
special ed teacher, and then I moved into the adult world. And over the last 20 or so years, as I'm sure you saw on my resume, I've done
Yes.
a lot of quality and compliance. I have done staff development and training, a lot of organizational improvement type roles, as well as program operations and that kind of thing. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. My love is helping organizations really shine when it comes to service delivery. And the way an organization can shine is through quality improvement, not just quality assurance, but using quality assurance to help improve and through staff development and training. And to me, they really go hand in hand. So it makes sense that this position involves both. Because how do you know what to what to train and what to focus on outside of the minimal regulatory stuff if you're
Mm-hmm.
not looking at where are we, what are the trends right now, what are the patterns, where do things seem to repeatedly fall down? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really I enjoy I look at data and I analyze and really um, organizational improvement so that the folks being served, the people with disabilities, can have the best possible outcomes. That's
Couple questions.
really what I love to do. Yes.
Okay, a couple questions. Now, we're not we're not a huge agency, but we're not a tiny agency. We're somewhere on the, smaller mid-size range. The number of, you know what I mean by incidents in the Justice Center, I'm assuming,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay.
Yep.
So for all of 2025, I think the total number of reportable incidents was fewer than, I think it was 17, actually. So
Wow.
it's not a huge amount, not a
No?
huge amount. And in fact, in that mix, there was maybe maybe one or two incidents which were, a little bit more troubling than the others. Um, so that means that I would expect, and you can tell me if you've had experience with Justice Center incidents, knowing how to use Irma and all of that software. And further, if there happens to be a slightly different subject, we just went through for the past 2 days an agency audit by OPWDD. I'm assuming you know what that means.
Yes.
And so we haven't, to my knowledge, since I've been around for 4 years, we haven't had any OMIG audits,
That's
but
lucky. They're
which
miserable.
is good. But the possibility always exists. OPWDD audits are pretty much taken for granted. You're going to have an audit one way or the other for whatever reason. So my question is, what experience have you had with one, investigations, doing them, reporting them, monitoring them, etc., and with audits?
I have a lot of experience in both.
Okay.
Um, part, really, mostly through my job when I was at Richmond Community Services. I did investigations all the time. Um,
Okay.
and I would enter them into the IRMA system and follow along and put in my recommendations and follow it through to the I think it was through the incident review committee and present it there and
IRC. Right.
yep. Yeah, so I actually I enjoy investigations, although sometimes they're hard to get through
They
just
are.
because of the
Sure.
what happened.
Right.
Um, and what was your next question? It was about
Audits.
oh,
Audits.
audits. Oh my gosh, yes. I used to oversee the quality for about I want to say 7 or 8 group homes and a
Mm-hmm.
couple of day programs,
Mm,
in-house day programs.
mm,
Actually, several of them. And I mean, I had a whole chart pinpointing. Okay, they were at this house this year. They were like I was the one who would go to these houses when OPWDD was there and facilitate in whatever way I could. But I spent a ton of time before the audits in
mm.
going around on a regular basis to each of the programs. I had big checklists, both for charts. I would review all, make sure all the paperwork is there that's supposed to be there, and that the notes were not just little scribble scrabble, that they actually told. Like I'm really big into quality. I don't just my standards are pretty high. So I collaborated a lot with the managers and I would go through the books. I would also do a lot of observations for just quality of support services. And I would
Hmm.
take notes and I would share the observations and I would make recommendations to either improve the flow of things or, if I saw that people were running out of time to eat, I would address, I was paying attention whatever was going on during my however long observation. I wrote it all up and made my recommendations, and worked together not just with the program managers but with the administrators that the managers reported to,
Okay.
and just to to improve everything and to make everything better. And really my main concern was how happy are the people in the residences and in the programs? Were they smiling? Were they actively participating in things, or were they just sitting there pushed to the side? I paid a lot of attention to their happiness and what are the goals that they're supposed to be working on, and do those goals even make sense for this particular person? I mean, I use a lot of my teaching background in the work that I do. It really, just in terms of, I was raised on IEP goals and what's a good goal and what's a measurable goal versus what's a silly goal that someone gives to like half the participants just to have something on paper. I'm very much not into that. I'm very into individualization and just making sure that whatever goals can be focused on and program activities that can be done are really, they're not just being done for the sake of doing them. They're engaging, and the people, the folks, participants, they're growing from it, and they're able to enjoy themselves while they're doing it, while of course at the same time meeting all the regulatory requirements, because that's super important. Although I don't put all my weight into quality assurance, because that's just meeting minimum standards that are written in a regulation. I look for how the quality of the activities of the staff. What are they doing, and how, I'm very familiar. I know how hard it is. Staffing is so challenging right now,
Yes,
and I used to, one of the common things that I would discuss with the residents is y'all need to get people out more. You need to help people go out and be a part of their communities more. And staffing was always an issue, and it always come down to
it
staffing.
is. Right,
And
right.
it is a challenge. And at the same time, I do feel there's always solutions. Sometimes we have to think outside of the box, even though that's kind of a
Mhm.
colloquialism. But we do. And I think with creative thinking, there can be ways of being creative with staffing patterns and who's going where and who's interested. And, you don't just throw everyone in a van and take them somewhere, whether they want to or not. That to me is not quality service delivery. It's about looking at who are the folks that, number one, who are the folks being supported? Who are they? What are their interests? What do they like? What do they not like? What are their strengths? What are their areas of difficulty? What kind of sensory, issues might they have? And then from there, you can just be creative. You can group people differently. And there are staffing is such a huge challenge. And I really do recognize that.
Mm.
And I also think with creative thinking and without staying within rigid, this is how we've always done it. That's one of my pet peeves, is hearing someone say,
Mm.
this is how we've always done it. And it's always
Right.
been good enough. And to me, good enough is not good enough.
Mm.
And just because something has been done for a million years in the past doesn't mean that we might not want to consider doing something a little differently. I'm all about systems change and improvement. Um, it can be very challenging working with staff or administration who like the ways that things have been done for 30 years, who are not open to change. It's a challenge. But I have always really made a point to really work together with management, with program managers and administration, um, to collaborate. I'm not someone who tends to come into an audit, an internal audit or an observation or whatever, and start saying, "Oh, this is bad and this is bad." I'm not all about bad, bad, bad. I'm all about,
Mhm.
first, let's look at what's working great, and then let's look at the things that are not going as great as they possibly could be, and then let's put our heads together and try to figure out solutions. And when I say putting heads together, I like to include not just administration and managers, but I like to include DSPs and self advocates in decision making, because I have as you saw on my resume, I have a strong self advocacy background, and
Mm.
people with disabilities absolutely have opinions and desires, and they can see when things aren't working well, and they'll tell you.
Mhm.
And sometimes the way that they tell could be reactive and for some other people, but to me, I always look, there are some people who have a hard time expressing when they're dissatisfied with something. But I've really learned over the years, you can't be reactive if a self advocate is expressing themselves in a difficult way. You have to look at what's the message behind it, and I understand that some folks have they have a hard time expressing themselves when they're dissatisfied. But once you listen and you let them know, I hear you and I understand that this is hard and this isn't working and this and that. Um, let's work together. I want to hear your opinions. And so I do think it's very important to get to include not just DSPs in decision making, but also self advocates because it's their lives. They're the ones who are receiving the services and they have really good input. But really, my all this talk I've been talking about for the last 5 minutes, to me, it's all about collaboration. I
Okay.
am not an authoritarian person at all. I'm very, very, very turned off by that um, method of doing quality and compliance. I like to
Okay.
collaborate and I know in my when I worked with Richmond and that was my quality and compliance experience. The main portion of it. I would go in at first. I was met with a lot of resistance. The managers were not used to someone coming into their homes
Right.
and and looking at their stuff, and they were very protective
Sure.
and a little or a lot resistant. But over the years, I just kept working with them and saying, look, I am not here saying bad, bad, bad. Look, I said, this is great and this is great and this is great. I said, I'm here to help you shine, not just for the OPWDD auditors, but for best outcomes. Like, why are we all here? We're here because we care about people, especially people with developmental disabilities, and we want them to have wonderful lives. So, and then I try to, whatever it is that I see in a program or in a chart or whatever, I try to explain if there's something that needs to be improved upon. I don't just say, this is the regulation and you have to follow it. Because that's like a parent telling a kid, you have to do this because I say so. I used to hate that as a kid. So I always make it a point to explain and connect the purpose behind why does this need to be done slightly differently, or why does this document need to be, why does this progress note need to be a little bit more descriptive. And I try to explain the reasons behind it so that people can understand I'm not here to just bust you. I'm here to help you and help you do your job and help your program shine, and most of all help the folks that are benefiting from your services, help them be happy and feel like their lives are fulfilling, because
Okay.
that's the whole idea. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Touch on a few things. So investigations, this is something you've experienced. Are you licensed? Do you have
I don't
a IAC or OPWDD license?
I don't believe so, because when
Okay.
I did quality, it was maybe, I guess it was maybe about 10 to 12 years ago. They did not require that. I'm
Okay.
sure I
Just
had to do
asking.
some kind of online, like,
Okay. So
yeah,
that's one. And then what is your experience with a program like TheraP, the EHR, if it's not TheraP itself?
sure. No, I'm familiar. I know Therap. I have not specifically worked in Therap, but I have worked in other electronic health records. Um, to me, learning any kind of online platform, it's just there's a learning curve, and you
Mm,
familiarize yourself with it, and you do it. But I'm pretty good with computers and technology and figuring out new systems, and I have no concerns about my ability to learn TheraP and then be able to use it to see trends and data and what's going on here and what's not going on there.
okay. Very good. Okay. So is there anything you want to ask me?
Um, yeah, I did have a couple questions. Um, one of my questions was, what are some of the biggest compliance difficulties or challenges that your organization is currently facing?
Hmm. I think it has to do with not so much okay, I'll mention a couple of areas. Incidents are always a great concern for whatever reason. So making sure that the staff from top to bottom understand the rules about incidents, how they should be reported, when they should be reported, et cetera, et cetera. I think that is such an important thing for us, and I think we haven't done, in my opinion, a good enough job of making sure that that education is instilled. Doesn't mean we don't try, but I think we could do a better job. And it doesn't mean, like I said, that we're flooded with incidents. We're not.
Right.
But still, that is such a critical part of compliance. And I think that's one area where we could use a lot more training. I think the orientation period needs to be beefed up considerably. We went from a very modest amount of training for new hires to a 2-day session recently, but I would like to see that expanded and ongoing. I think so. Under the heading of training itself, with a subheading of orientation, I would say that's a big issue for me. Training as it takes place at the beginning, training as it takes place along the way. We use a system called Paycom, which is the payroll system. And there is something, we had been using Relias, but I don't think we're going to continue with it. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's an online training platform. It's okay. And then we have Paycom, which is the payroll system, which has something called Paycom Learning in it. I think also, and this isn't really and because we're introducing TheraP, the going from paper-based records to electronic health records system, that's going to be a major life change for a lot of the people in the company. Some of them are going to take to it very quickly, but then there are going to be a lot of others who are struggling with it. I can see it because when we introduced Paycom, even though people live on their telephones, they still didn't, get to use it efficiently. So the adoption of technology and how to use it for your own benefit, for the benefit of the company, for the benefit of the individuals, not necessarily in that order, but for all three of those parties, is critical, in my opinion. And we have a workforce which is across the board. We have people who've been there 30, 35 years. We have those people. And then we have the people who just got here, who tend to be a little bit younger, who maybe adopt technology a little faster. But still, we have a broad range of people with different skill levels. So that process of adopting and using technology the way it's supposed to is going to be very important. And I'm not saying you're going to be a teacher of, PCs or anything like that, but the compliance officer has to make sure that, the technology that we have is being used in a way so that we're compliant. This internal audit that we just completed yesterday is definitely better than the results are definitely better than they were 3 years ago when the last one took place. But there are still areas where, because information is decentralized or siloed, or it's in a paper form or something like that, there were a couple of missteps. I'm not saying serious, we're not going to be shut down or anything like that. I'd like us to do better in that area. I told the the chief investigator from OPWDD yesterday when they did the exit conference. I said, I want this agency the next time around to be in a situation where if you call me on a Monday and say, hey, guess what? We're coming in. We are ready on Tuesday, fully ready. All the paper is not paper. All the records are there. Everything is ready. I don't want anybody scrambling around, trying to find this record or that record. Oh my God, I forgot where it was. No, I want us to run efficiently because, that if there's any organization in the world which is more regulated than an OPWDD provider agency, I'd like to know what it is. Because we have people hanging over us constantly, as you know. Mm-hmm. So we need to step up our game in terms of adoption of technology, use of technology, transfer of information from paper form to this digital form, and get with the program. So I would expect the compliance officer you've asked me what a one of the challenges is. I think that's a challenge, and meeting that challenge will be a function not only for our coordinators but also for the compliance officer, because you're going to be training people, in these methods. So you yourself will have to be, you know, you don't have to be a systems engineer. None of this is terribly
Right.
complicated, but you do have to have an appreciation and understanding of what these systems are meant to do and what they can do, and how to transfer that information, at least at a basic level, to the staff. So I don't know if that answers your question. So I think it's incident management, reporting practices, adoption of technology. Um, I think those are from my perspective, those are the main areas. We don't have people, we have I would say a very good record of incidents with regards to the individuals and how they're treated and the care that they get. There are occasional slip ups, but in my time here, there has never been anything that is, dramatic that would put us on this early alert list or whatever they call it. No, that hasn't happened. We just need to do a better job of organization, in my opinion. And that comes, in my opinion, with thorough and ongoing training.
Yes. Amen. Yes,
No, it really is. I
it
don't
is.
think a lot of
Yeah.
agencies don't give enough emphasis. They don't put enough emphasis on the importance of that. I've been
Yeah.
told in earlier days in this role that, well, if this is and I'm not trying to disparage anybody here, but I've been told, well, if you give them all this training, they're going to up and leave. Fine. But if they stay and they're effective employees, that's the goal. And training is a modest expense compared to the difficulties that you would face because of lack of training. You're suddenly involved in a lawsuit, or if something happens to one of the individuals, God forbid, or you have an audit that you failed, all because you didn't know what you were doing, or you weren't
Right.
trained to know what you should be doing. So
Exactly. No,
no,
I
it
agree
is
with you.
such a critical part of this function.
Absolutely. If staff aren't told and taught in a engaging way, not just
Yeah,
someone standing in front of a room going want 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 want, like that, to me, that's not good training. And engaging, if staff are not trained and told what the expectations are, and in terms of skill develop, whatever, in terms of knowing what they got to know, how can they, of
yeah,
course things
it's
are going to fall
yeah.
apart.
We need
And
to
you
do a
can't
better job.
blame staff if they're never
Right?
told
No,
what to do. You can't blame them.
no,
So
we need to
although
do a better job.
unfortunately I have seen that many times, but no,
Are there
I
any other questions that you have?
um one more. Do program managers generally view compliance at your organization as a collaborative kind of function or as an oversight function?
I think it's interesting because we've had a number of compliance officers in the past few years. It went from being more collaborative to oversight, and it's shifting back to a collaborative method.
Good.
And some of that has to do with the personalities of the compliance officers
Mhm.
and the way they interacted with the managers, because that is really important. You cannot go into an organization where you've had these people who've been here forever, know what they're doing, but are maybe set in their ways, and just have, well, you have to do it this way. And here's an email telling you have to do it this way.
Yeah,
No,
no.
you have to build. It's very similar to politics or sales or something like that. You have to build a relationship. It doesn't mean you have to do whatever they want and ignore the rules, but it goes a long way to achieving your goal of compliance if people trust, understand, work with you comfortably. So my vote would be to, there has to be some oversight. That's the nature of the job, but it's much more effective if it's done in a collaborative fashion. So I'm all for that. It doesn't, like I said, people have to do what they're told ultimately, but you can get them to do that more easily if they want to
Yeah.
work with you.
Yes. Good. Okay, that's all my questions for now.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this recording. I'm going to show it to several of the coordinators, and we'll probably get back to you by early next week for a follow-up Zoom. And you can let me know if there are better days than others to have the conversation. And then if we proceed, I might ask you to come in to the main office, meet the people, see the work. And if there is an offer made, is there a time during which you have to give notice to anybody, or are you available on short notice, or what's your schedule like?
I'm pretty much available on short notice.
Okay.
I don't have to give notice anywhere. And as far as my availability next week, I'm pretty open.
All right. Write down, send me an email with
Okay.
your with the availability. Thank you,
Okay.
Sandy. I appreciate your time.
Sure. Thank
Have a good
you.
weekend. Thank
You
you.
too. Bye.
Bye.